Welcome back to another episode of Stand on Guard. I'm your host, David Krayden, coming at you live from our nation's capital here in Ottawa, where it's a sunny day. Happy Sunday, everybody. We're going to be talking about the mainstream media hypocrisy and how they are playing us when we come back.
The Prime Minister lied and his minions continue to lie.
We need political change. But we also need to resolve to resist.
Yes, please like the station and subscribe. We're getting up to our objective of 100,000. Now we're a little ways away, but we're gonna make it with your help. Thank you so much for your support. I want to talk about a couple of things before we get to the videos today, but this is incredibly important. I cannot believe that any court would do this. The Freedom Convoy organizers have been fined $20,000 for what? Having a peaceful protest? This is absolutely outrageous. Now, I encourage you to donate to the Freedom Convoy. And I know people who did donate to the Freedom Convoy, and they had their bank accounts frozen. And this is lasting residue, total lack of freedom here. I want to sound the alarm. Share this. Go on your X and share this, because this is absolutely outrageous. And I can't say that enough. I'm going to keep saying it too. But here's a kicker too. Recount sees Liberals take Quebec riding of Terrebonne by a single vote. Now, you might have seen this elsewhere this morning. I noticed this when I was looking at the news clips this morning. You're kidding me. They found where are they finding these votes? And how come? Here's the question I have for you. How come you're not allowed to question elections if you're a conservative, but it's quite all right to question the outcome if you're a liberal? Just like in the United States, it was okay for Hillary Clinton to say she had the election stolen from her in 2016, but Donald Trump couldn't say that. And I just find this incredible. He won by a single vote. Anyway, I think our political system, I have to be very careful how I phrase this. I think our political system is just increasingly corrupt in this country. And somebody in the comment section said, "You ain't seen nothing yet." You're right. You're absolutely right. It's going to get worse under Mark Carney. This is a man who has navigated the globalist business world for decades, a banker. So I think we are in for a wild ride. And here's an interesting poll. I hope you can see this, everybody. But it comes down to the red is people who don't want a referendum. It's an oddly phrased poll because it's not about whether they support separation, it's whether you want a referendum on separation. So that's very odd. But anyway, it's about evenly split between the blues and the reds. Red meaning opposed to the referendum, blues meaning supporting it. So it's about 52-48. But like I say, I've seen other polls, and the hardcore support for independence is about 25%, and the soft core is about 15%. So you got about 40%. And I think that could possibly go higher the longer we're putting up with Mark Carney. So everything is basically open now. And here's the conundrum, though, for Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. He's going back to Alberta to run in a by-election And it'll be about timing-wise, it could be around the same time that the forces of independence want a separate referendum. They're not waiting until 2026. They want a referendum on independence included in the municipal elections in the fall. So if that coincides with Pierre Poilievre's by-election, it spells trouble. And I've said this before. It would have been a hell of a lot easier for Poilievre to run in one of the rural ridings outside of Ottawa. And there are MPs there who have been around for a long, long time, over 20 years. So that would have been a lot easier. But he's going back to Alberta in the midst of a separation debate, and it's not going to help his campaign at all. I mean, clearly, Poilievre is a federalist, and he's going to state that categorically. But it's going to create friction in that riding. I guarantee it. And that's the problem. I'm sure, if you think about this, it's highly problematic. But how is the media playing us? You remember during the election campaign, it was unthinkable that Ontario would lose the auto industry. Doug Ford kept telling us it just can't happen. Not going to happen. But now suddenly, it's almost a fait accompli that we're going to lose the auto industry in Ontario. And the media is playing along with this, like, why do you think this is odd? Why do you think there's anything strange about this? Clearly, the time has passed. So I want to show this interview here. And it's quite interesting because this goes to show you how the media suddenly is playing games about reality. The whole election campaign had an air of unreality about it. I've said that time and time again. It was Orwellian at times. The elbows up nonsense, somewhere between the chicken dance and the 2 minutes of hate from 1984. Very, very odd. But now suddenly, it's like none of the election threats, fear, have materialized. Suddenly, Mark Carney and Donald Trump are the best of friends. And I'm laughing at some of these headlines about, Mark Carney knows how to treat Donald Trump. He knows how to control Donald Trump. Yeah. Well, yeah. All you have to do is get on your knees and beg and worship the man. And that's how Mark Carney dealt with Donald Trump. And I found the whole thing was surreal. And I'm still marveling at the response. Here was a man that Mark Carney positioned as a mortal threat to Canada. And he almost talked about going to war with the United States. And suddenly he goes down to visit Donald Trump, and it's all okay. There's no problem here. And we're getting to Doug Ford in a minute, but just watch this interview. It's absolutely fascinating how the media has decided there's no more panic. The panic is over. Mark Carney has been elected. They worked very hard to get him elected, and this is the result.
Good morning, Anne-Marie.
We know that Canada's relationship with China has been tense. It was wrapped up by those 2024 tariffs on Chinese EVs, steel and aluminum products, and then China retaliated, as we just mentioned. But the Chinese ambassador to Beijing said that China wants to partner with Canada to push back against American bullying, is how they described it. Why would it make sense to remove restrictions on China, or what would need to happen for this relationship to improve?
This is an excellent question because, of course, China is the second largest economy on planet Earth, $19 trillion GDP, second only to the United States at 30 trillion. Huge market because no country is self-sufficient. China is no exception. They're the largest importer of natural gas, for example, huge importer of agricultural products. So to your question, Canada adopted the 100% tariff and to be in sync, if you will, with American policy. President Biden not Trump, not here to defend Trump at all, but it was Biden who put the 100% tariff on EVs. And there's a reason for that. And I've been teaching in China since 1997, once a year in an MBA program. And I've ridden in many different Chinese EVs because my students pick me up at the hotel to take me to the class each day, and they take turns. And when you look at the IEA data, China has 60% world market share in EVs. Why? Because they're far less expensive and they're of better quality. And the American and the Europeans are not competitive in EVs. So that's why they put this tariff on. However, when you drill down, we are not making small EVs. I mean, the Chinese make a Seagull that's $15,000. And so the idea that it would be a threat to our auto industry is problematic because we produce overwhelmingly huge vehicles, 2-ton SUVs and, and F-150 trucks and that sort of thing. So, and as a consequence, we've alienated the Chinese and they've slapped significant tariffs on a sector that's very important to Canada, which is natural resources and agriculture. So there's the broad argument.
Well, let's bring agriculture into this discussion because, we've spoken with canola farmers who say they were frustrated that the federal government put this tariff on EVs, knowing that it would come back on them, and it did. So in order for this relationship to improve on the auto sector, what would canola farmers be calling for?
Well, let me just go back to the auto sector for a moment. I mean, President Trump has thus far, from the very beginning until now, has been consistent on one thing. He said the U.S. doesn't need our cars. They don't want Canada to make cars. And so there are very profound, serious questions of whether the car industry, manufacturing industry, will remain in Canada. The industry itself and former Prime Minister Trudeau said, if the 25% tariffs remain in place on the auto industry is finished. It's not sustainable. I agree with that assessment, by the way. We've got to start preparing for the day when we are maybe possibly going to exit auto industry. As horrible as that will be to people in Southern Ontario, Australia did it in the late 90s. It didn't devastate Australia. Australia is now higher average income per capita than we are in Canada. But we've got to start preparing for that day. And we've got.
So there's the elephant in the room. Prepare for the day when there's no auto industry in Canada. That was unthinkable just a few weeks ago. Now we've got people on the news not only talking about it, but sounding like it's going to happen. And not only that, somebody's finally tied it to canola. These poor canola farmers are been asking for attention. This is killing their livelihood. Finally, somebody has said it.
Bullying is how they've described it. Why would it?
President Trump has thus far, from the very beginning until now, has been consistent on one thing. He said the U.S. doesn't need our cars. They don't want Canada to make cars. And so there are very profound, serious questions of whether the car industry, manufacturing industry, will remain in Canada. The industry itself and former Prime Minister Trudeau said, if the 25% tariffs remain in place on the auto industry is finished. It's not sustainable. I agree with that assessment, by the way. We've got to start preparing for the day when we are maybe possibly going to exit auto industry. As horrible as that will be to people in Southern Ontario, Australia did it in the late 90s. It didn't devastate Australia. Australia is now higher average income per capita than we are in Canada. But we've got to start preparing for that day. And we've got to diversify, as we all know, our exports, such as, oh my goodness, agricultural exports to China. So that's one of the reasons, I think, why we've got to start looking at this and saying we've got to start developing alternatives to the United States to reduce our dependency on the United States. And a good place to start would be getting rid of those 100% tariffs on Chinese EVs, which would make them much more affordable to Canadian consumers and enable Canada to achieve its GHG emissions targets.
The talks are happening this weekend between China and the U.S. There's astronomical tariffs being placed on each country by each other. What are you watching for this weekend from those talks?
I think both sides are going to blink, notwithstanding all the grandstanding and the posturing and the bellicose rhetoric from Mr. Trump, President Trump. It's in the mutual. I keep quoting Henry Kissinger, and he always used to talk about nations have interests, not friends. And it's in the strategic self-interest of the United States and China to come up with a deal that doesn't ruin both sides or cause great economic damage to both sides. This is why I think think they're going to compromise, and they're going to come up with a deal. I mean, they're joined at the hip. I mean, China's the largest exporter in the world. Who's the largest importer in the world? The U.S. Who are they importing from? China. So, American consumers benefit from that, but so does the Chinese economy enormously benefit. So both sides receive enormous benefits from the relationship with each other. And that's why I think it's inevitable they're going to eventually come to a deal. And I mean sooner, not years in the future.
Associate Professor at Carleton University, Sprott School of Business, Ian Lee, always great to chat with you. Have a great weekend.
So, no panic. Hey, Australia did it. And they have a higher standard of living than we do. I think about every other democratic country in the world has a higher standard of living than Canada. But do you see how we're being played? It's like the war is over. It's like in 1984, they're at war with, you say, Eurasia or it's Oceania. And suddenly that war is over. We were never fighting that country. We're at war now with this country. So suddenly it's like, hey, take the tariffs off the EVs, but people still won't buy them. It's not because of the tariffs that they can't sell Chinese cars, because they can't sell electric vehicles, whether they're made in China, the United States, or Canada. Nobody wants these cars. So let's stop pretending it's about the tariff. But here's a guy, Sprott School of Business from my old alma mater, Carleton, saying, prepare for the day when the auto industry is history. What does Doug Ford have to say about that, I'm wondering? Well, but of course, Doug Ford, he's now pretending to be a real conservative. I'm almost calling Doug Ford a phony conservative, because that's exactly what he is. He doesn't believe in any conservative value. He believes in getting elected. That's what Doug Ford is all about. It's about Doug Ford getting elected again and again and again. God knows he might even come back again for another term. Hey, when people are buying the recipe, why not? But Doug Ford, was very dismissive of Alberta independence. It's not going to happen, can't happen. And he was, I think, very insulting to Premier Danielle Smith, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith. So he's backtracking. But this is an interesting series of clips. So you can see how Doug Ford is all over the map, as he always is.
No, I'm not for that whatsoever. We need to stay united. We're so much stronger when we're all sticking together. So hopefully that's never going to happen.
That's it. Thank you. What are you going to be asking tomorrow when you speak with the First Ministers and the Prime Minister? What are going to be your questions to the Prime Minister?
Well, the big national infrastructure projects. He's asked all the premiers to give him a list. We sent our list forward, and I believe in building pipelines as well. You mentioned.
Well, now he believes in building pipelines, but Mark Carney doesn't believe in building pipelines, at least in Canada. He supported Bill C-69, which banned pipelines in Canada. Will Mark Carney change his tune on that? I doubt it very much.
About Alberta, Colin, I'm a big proponent of building pipelines west, north, and east. That's critical, and along with.
Not going to happen east, because guess what province is next to you, Doug Ford? Quebec, which is refusing to have pipelines built.
With other infrastructure projects, we need to continue building here. We need to diversify our trade to other countries around the world. We can't be beholden to the U.S., which we have been for decades now. So this will give us an opportunity to really prosper.
Wondering if you have any retort for Premier Doug Ford today after what he said in Toronto about the possible separatism referendum.
Well, Doug and I have a great friendship. We don't agree on everything.
I don't think they agree on anything, actually. But can you? I really find this a little hard to swallow. These two are the best of friends now, and of course, Mark Carney is in the middle of it. Doug Ford supported Mark Carney being elected. He was clearly in Mark Carney's ball field, and he wanted Mark Carney because I think he knows he's going to get more out of Mark Carney, because this is all Doug Ford can talk about now is infrastructure projects, because I think he's accepted the fact that the auto industry could be leaving Ontario. Now, suddenly that's a fait accompli.
In fact, I think we supported different people in the last federal election. And so we don't have to agree on everything. But what I will say is we have a constructive conversation at the coffee table. I continue to look forward to having a constructive conversation with him at the coffee table. But he's the Premier of Ontario. I'm the Premier of Alberta. We just have different issues that we have to respond to in our respective jurisdictions.
Do you think he should stick in his own lane? Or, what do you say as any kind of a retort?
Well, I don't tell him how he should run his province, and I would hope that he doesn't tell me how I should run mine. But we have a very respectful relationship, and I hope that continues.
Like, we get along. I think there's this big misnomer that we don't get along. I could call her up right now and say, come to Toronto, we'll be going out for lunch. So there's not this big rift that everyone's playing out. I just want to support the people of Alberta and Saskatchewan. They've been ignored for a decade now, and I support them. It's as simple as that.
Are you hopeful that you can diffuse the Alberta secession movement with this kind of talk? I mean, I don't know, was there any talk about Premier Smith's potential referendum?
Well, I just always say, united we stand, divided we fall, and that was my message today. And let's continue making sure that we unite the country, not divide the country.
Yeah. So Doug Ford is now feeling qualms of guilt because Alberta and Saskatchewan have been totally ignored for 10 years of a Trudeau government that Doug Ford supported down to the invocation of the Emergencies Act. No premier was more enthusiastic about crushing the Freedom Convoy than Doug Ford. Mark Carney was as well. He was advising Trudeau to invoke the Emergencies Act and use tanks against these defenseless, peaceful protesters who now are being fined $20,000. This is absolutely incredible. But do I take Doug Ford at his word? Do you think Doug Ford really wants to help Westerners? I doubt that very much. Here, let's pay a visit to the store, and I'll be back with some more enlightening comments. Happy Mother's Day, by the way, to all you mothers out there. And I hope you're having a great Sunday with your family. And we extend that wish to everybody. We had some very bad news in our family this week. And keep us in your prayers. We appreciate it. And it's difficult to lose a loved one. It's very difficult. And I've been through it before, and I'll be through it. I'll be through it again. But it's a hard ordeal to go through. There's no easy way to get through it. But thank you for your thoughts and prayers this week. We appreciate that very much. And we will be back again tomorrow. I was away for a day or so, and I will be back doing this job as I try to reach out. These are very strange times politically. We have a prime minister who I think is capable of doing just about anything. And he will take us down a destructive path. I'm not convinced that he's really a middle of the road, small C conservative. I don't believe that for a minute. Mark Carney has said volumes in the past about his support for net zero, his support for environmental extremism. His favorite political figures are Karl Marx and Vladimir Lenin. That is ominous. And this guy is now the Prime Minister of Canada. And I'm predicting he's going to cobble together a majority government in the next few days. He's only 2 seats away now that he won that landslide in Quebec by 1 vote. He will try to cobble together a majority government. And that is going to be catastrophic for Canada. I don't know if we have 4 years to spend with Mark Carney as Prime Minister. These are going to be extremely tough years. Thank you for watching today. I will be back as scheduled. And this has been a pleasure. And tune in again tomorrow. We're live at 10 o'clock. Started a little early today. Back at 10 o'clock time slot tomorrow. Be there. These as we get closer to Parliament meeting again, we're 2 weeks away from that. These are very, very exciting, contentious, and dangerous times. God bless this country. Godspeed to all of you, and continue to resolve to resist.